Welcome to the IT Smart Guy Podcast, a technology podcast aimed at the modern business owner. And here's your host, Tony Edwards. Hi, and welcome to episode 21 of the IT Smart Guy Podcast, the tech-based podcast for the modern business owner. I'm Tony, and in this episode, we are going to talk about asset disposal, an update on the clop group, which I talked about last week, and some potential fisticuffs between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. We are then going to jump into the interview where we have Paul Green of the MSP Marketing Podcast on the show. And this time around, we're going to talk marketing, AI, and a plethora of other things. Finally, as always, at the end, I'll be sharing a tip from the episode. Let's jump straight into the news. Let's look at what's happening in the news. First up this week on the news, millions of storage devices are needlessly shredded each and every year instead of being reused. This is according to the Circular Drive Initiative, the CDI, which is a consortium of technology companies advocating for secure hardware reuse. Chia Network, a blockchain technology provider, discovered that IT asset disposition firms responsible for disposing of old technology were shredding drives despite their potential for reuse. Most drives are destroyed because data centers and cloud service providers have a zero risk policy when it comes to data security. However, this approach can ironically increase the risk as modern drives have high data density, making data recovery possible even from the smallest of fragments. To address this issue, a more secure method called purging has been proposed. Purging involves the overwriting of drives with new data patterns or by employing cryptographic erase to scramble the data by deleting the encryption key. These methods render data recovery infeasible using current tools and techniques. Seagate, a leading data storage provider and CDI member, refurbishes and resells drives to reduce electronic waste. And in the 2022 fiscal year, Seagate refurbished and resold over 1 million hard drives and solid state drives, which prevented more than 540 tonnes of e-waste. However, the challenge lies in scaling up these initiatives and expanding the refurbishment programs. The principle of secure hardware reuse extends beyond storage devices to other equipment like routers. It's crucial for companies to establish comprehensive decommissioning processes to securely dispose of devices while protecting sensitive data. They also need to test the sanitation process to save the documentation. All of this is recommended. And companies should also facilitate easy reporting of security leaks. By embracing these sustainable practices around the prioritisation of secure data removal and moving away from the linear take, make, waste economy, businesses can contribute to a more environmentally friendly and data secure future. In the last episode, I mentioned the clop group and their hack on a number of large organisations, including the BBC. Well, this week I've got an update. If you can cast your mind back a couple of weeks, several large UK organisations reported a mass hack in which sensitive payroll data had been stolen. However, the cybercriminals known as clop, who have been posting company profiles of victims to pressure them into paying a ransom, now claim they don't possess the data. This raises the possibility that another hacking group has the stolen information and that clop is telling pork pies. The UK payroll provider Zealous, which was breached to gain access to the data, declined to comment due to an ongoing police investigation. Clop has been gradually adding the names, websites and company addresses of nearly 50 victims, including banks, universities, travel firms and software companies from various countries, to its darknet website. Some companies listed by clop have confirmed that they have had data stolen. The hackers are threatening to publish the stolen data unless victims pay a ransom, likely in the form of hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin. The situation has become more complex as cybersecurity experts are puzzled by Clop's claims. One theory seems to suggest that Clop may be covering up the fact that they stole the data as part of a sale deal with another hacking group, and the hackers deny this, but it's also possible that another group accessed and stole the data before Clop, or that the data was stolen in a different way. In response to these cyber threats, the US government has announced a $10 million reward for information connecting malicious cyber actors to foreign governments and targeting US critical infrastructure. Finally, it's time to face the octagon. Elon Musk, the renowned tech entrepreneur and CEO Finally, we head to the octagon. Elon Musk, the renowned technology entrepreneur and CEO of companies like SpaceX and Tesla, recently made the headlines with a surprising announcement. In a bold and somewhat unconventional move, Musk has challenged Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook and Meta, to a cage fight. Musk took to Twitter, expressing his willingness to engage in this physical showdown, to which Zuckerberg responded with a similar request for the location. The unexpected exchange quickly garnered attention and sparked debates among social media users everywhere about who would emerge victorious in such a match. Memes and mock posters promoting the fight have begun circulating online, adding to the viral nature of this interaction. Now, while Musk's initial challenge did seem light-hearted, he later shared videos of walruses and joked about his own lack of workout routine, suggesting that the challenge may not have been entirely serious. However, the idea of these influential tech moguls squaring off in a cage match captured the imagination of many. Some speculated about the potential logistics and expressed excitement over the prospect of seeing the two clash. Dana White, the president of the UFC, was even mentioned as someone who might be interested in organising the event. Ultimately, the Musk-Zuckerberg cage fight remains an intriguing yet highly unlikely event. Both individuals have made significant contributions to the technology industry, but their skills in the fighting arena remain untested, in Musk's case at least. Nevertheless, the playful banter between these influential figures has provided a moment of entertainment and speculation in the world of technology and in pop culture. Who do I think would win? Zuckerberg's just featured in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, so I think he might have it. That's it for the news. Let's move on to the good stuff. Do you watch this podcast on YouTube? I hope you have seen the product improve somewhat over the last episode or two. This is down to me going on to friend of the show Pete Matheson's video masterclass. In this self-paced course, Pete walks you through everything you need to know about improving your video, from the way you talk to the camera to the gear you need and everything in between. Plus, he gives you personal feedback on the videos you produce. You might think that learning this way is lonely, but by signing up, you get exclusive lifetime access to a video masterclass Discord channel filled with like-minded people, all of whom have the same goal: to get more comfortable talking to camera. And it's not just IT people like me on the course. There are people from different industries in there too, bookkeepers and copywriters to name a couple. So if you want to take your video to the next level, I highly recommend clicking on the link in the show notes and taking a look for yourself. let's jump into the interview.
The interview.
So we now come to the interview part of the podcast, and I'm really happy that this gentleman's agreed to join me today. I've been a subscriber of his MSP Marketing Edge service for about 18 months, and it has helped me no end with my marketing as a one-man MSP. So I'd love to welcome Mr. Paul Green to the podcast. Hi Paul, how are you?
Hello, thank you so much I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's exciting. I love being on podcasts because normally I do a podcast myself and normally I'm the interviewer. So it's really exciting to actually be interviewed by someone. It's
funny because I'm listening to you and it sounds like I'm listening to the podcast. Your voice is no different whether you're recording or talking. It's quite unbelievable because I know I've got a few friends that do podcasts, and when you sit and have a chat with them, they sound completely different. But for this interaction, it just sounds like I'm listening to your MSP Marketing Podcast as well. So for those people that are listening that don't know who you are and what you do, how about we start there?
Yeah, sure. So these days I work with MSPs, managed service providers, the world's greatest, most lovely people who all of them, their desire when they wake up in the morning is genuinely to help people. And if they can make some money along the way, then that's a bonus. And so I work with 700 of these MSPs all across the world. So we've got a ton of people we're working with here in the UK, even more out in the USA, over in America, and a smattering of other countries. We've got about 700 MSPs that we work with, and we help them with their marketing. So unlike you, Tony, I'm not a tech genius. I know actually very little about technology, and to switch it off and switch it back on again is my limit. But I am good at marketing, and I got good at marketing the hard way, just by doing it in, day out for years and years and years. And these days, all of my marketing help is on MSPs. So we put together tons of marketing resources, and we give it to all of the MSPs that we work with in one go. And what we do is we only work with one per area. The idea being that you and no one else has got these marketing resources. But what's really interesting, and I've been working with MSPs since 2016, so that's 7 years, is just how much marketing has changed. And the lockdown, which is 3 years ago now, that saw a massive sea change, obviously in work habits, but also in marketing habits. And Tony, I'm sure you could tell us how much tech has changed, how much technology has changed in the last 7 years. Well, I think marketing unusually has actually changed a huge amount as well.
Yeah, I think lockdown made everybody, embrace digital marketing a lot more. Certainly for myself, I was doing online networking pretty much from word dot when we were told to go into lockdown, because at that point, I was just starting my business. I didn't start it until the start of the pandemic. So great time to start a business. But the only way I could go and actually meet people was through networking events, and I'd never been to one before. So that was quite interesting how everybody was diving into online marketing, online networking, and all these things to keep their businesses afloat. And I think now we're kind of out the other side. To some people, I think they're reluctant to almost bring back those older methods of like lumpy mail and that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that? Just to throw in an extra question that was a bit unplanned.
Yeah, no, unplanned questions are the best ones. I completely agree. I think just as the world embraced remote working, and I think in that lockdown, that first sort of, 3-4 months, certainly here in the UK, I think we as a society, we moved 10 years forward in terms of our desire to work from home, our desire for work-life balance, our flexibility. And these days, anyone that's looking for any kind of role to recruit, that the question's going to come up of, can I work from home? Is the flexible working? What kind of kit are you giving me? And 3 years ago, that was maybe we're thinking about it, and now it's become a must-have because everyone else is offering it. Marketing, you're absolutely right. Suddenly, we had some of our greatest growth of our marketing service in that lockdown year, because suddenly people were sat at home. I think they were sort of drumming their fingers together, saying, "Right, I've done a bit of online networking. I've done a bit of this. What's next? What am I going to do now?" And so they jumped and looked for marketing, and everyone has embraced digital marketing so much that does create an opportunity, a huge opportunity for, as you said, Tony, to embrace the old-fashioned stuff. So right now we're recommending, obviously we have a ton of digital marketing stuff and we're fully embraced on that. But we also recommend that you get a book printed. So we write a book for our members that they can put their name on and get it printed. And it's a physical thing they can give to their prospects. We do the same with a buyer's guide. We tell them to get it printed. We tell them to do something called impact boxes. And that's when you want to make an impact with a prospect, you literally give them a box. And it's got in your buyer's guide, your book, perhaps a proposal, but also some sweets, some chocolate bars, some goodies, some merch, a mug, a pen. It's all physical stuff. I'm a big fan of actually presenting proposals in person. Don't just email it over. Even using clever software like Better Proposals, which tracks whether or not they've opened it, it's just more digital noise. And the more digital noise you've got, the problem is you're competing with all of the other digital noise. So yes, and I think this applies to any business, certainly in a B2B scope, but also from consumer marketing as well. Yes, we're back as a society at where we were pre-lockdown in terms of going to shops and eating out and stuff like that. But a lot of the marketing has stayed digital, and digital marketing is way too easy for people to just ignore.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've branded up the book, I've branded up the buyer's guide, and they're at the printers now waiting for some to come through, because I think impact boxes are a great idea. Perhaps not chocolate bars right now because it is rather warm in the UK.
Yes, lollipops.
But something that's a little bit more long-lasting in the heat is definitely on the horizon for me in terms of marketing for future prospects and things. And yeah, I agree with the digital noise as well. I've sent a lot of proposals out over the last 3 or 4 months, and I would use a software because for me at the time, especially as a one-man band, it's easier for me. But I've actually changed my approach in the last 2. If I can get to them, I do and deliver them in person. We will talk through it, or I send them in the post again as a physical, and say, look, let's have a call, let's book a video call. You've got a copy of the proposal, I've got a copy of the proposal. We can work through it that way, and actually that's worked quite well because you almost got the hybrid approach that way.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, sorry to jump in, you mentioned easy. And as humans, we are genetically programmed to look for the easy path because, life is complicated. And we think it's complicated now. It was a lot more complicated when we were living in caves and hitting dinosaurs and competing with tigers for food. It doesn't feel it to our modern minds, but it was more complicated. And so we've grown up, we've evolved over several 100,000 generations to look for the easy path because we're always trying to reduce the mental burden on our brain. I think as sophisticated business owners, anytime you find yourself doing something and you think, oh, that's really easy, you've got to ask yourself, is there a more difficult way of doing it that other people aren't doing? And quite often in marketing, it's not always, but quite often it's looking at what the average business is doing. Whatever business you're in, look at what all the other business owners are doing and then say, right, if everyone else is on Instagram, then obviously I should be on Instagram, yes. But what else should I be doing that they're not doing? So if I've got 10 competitors and they're all marketing in exactly the same way, how can I stand out? And it's great to hear that you, Tony, are getting out and going to see people because your competitors aren't doing that, right? They're just emailing the software, emailing the proposals over, chasing people up. Even if let's say you went from closing a 3 in 4 sales. So let's say doing it digitally, you close 2 in 4 sales, and just by getting out there, you close 3 in 4 sales. That's a 50% improvement in your sales, and that's insane when you think about it for the sake of just getting out there. But what it does is it shows the prospect you're talking to that you're taking them more seriously, that you consider them to be more worthy of your time, and that gives more of their attention back onto you. It's lovely.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about marketing and things already. Where did you kind of start? 'Cause obviously you mentioned, you learned marketing the hard way by being in it day in, day out. How did you get started in the marketing space? Because listening to your podcast, you started off as a radio presenter, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was a newspaper reporter to start with on a little weekly newspaper back in the days before the internet, when literally all we had to do was one newspaper a week. It was awesome, and so I learned about journalism very quickly, and then got into radio, which was always my love. It's always what I wanted to do as a kid, and I was a newsreader on a breakfast show, and then I was like a proper music presenter for 10 years. And it was such good fun until the point it wasn't fun. And you know what it's like with any job. You get to the point where if I don't stop now, I'm going to end up hating this. By that point, I was actually running radio stations. So I was on the radio, and then sort of the manager of the programming, and I started to learn marketing there, because radio stations, I mean, what is today the Heart Group? So you'll know, like Heart, Capital, Smooth. I worked for all the stations I worked for are now part of that group and rebranded. And back in the day, back in the sort of the late 90s up to the mid noughties, we had no budget. So I was under this incredible pressure from head office to raise listening, to get more listeners, but there was literally no marketing budget. So me and my team, we learned the hard way, and we learned through experiments. We all of our stuff was physical. We had promotional vehicles. We used to get out there, but we'd do competitions, and it was anything to get people to notice us, but within our brand rules, because our head office had a whole series of things we couldn't do, and I was actually one of the troublemakers that would often come up with things that I was told not to do, like the time I bought a £50 car and got it branded up to look like a radio station vehicle, which was completely against brand guidelines. They had to have big 4x4s, but I managed to get a few months out of that £50 car before I got away with it, and that got us noticed more than anything else, because all of the radio stations had big, expensive looking cars. We had a crap £50 Volkswagen Polo, I think it was, that was like 3 weeks away from failing its MOT. But yeah, so that I learned marketing the hard way, and then 2005 started a PR and marketing business, because that's what you do, isn't it? When you start your own business, you were an IT guy before, Tony, so you started an IT business. That's what we do. That was moderately okay until the point I discovered something called niching. So niching or verticaling is where you pick a small market and you super serve that market. And I had, we would take on any old clients for our marketing business. And then one day I got to know an optician really well. His name was Richard. We became really good friends. And he said to me, you should do what you do just for opticians. And this was around about 2010. And it sparked off this thing in my head. I read lots of books. I read marketing and business books all the time. And I remember saying to him, I've read that in like 20 books. And so I did it. So I focused just on opticians, and there aren't that many independent opticians around because of Specsavers. So we then followed where does that money go, and opticians and veterinarians, if you're in the US, and dentists, they're all the same thing. They do different things to different species, but it's healthcare, independent healthcare in the UK. So we built a business up. It was only £1 million a year turnover, but it was a great business, very profitable, just doing marketing for opticians, vets and dentists. And then I sold that in 2016. That was a premium sale. We sold it to an SEO company, and I had a 5-year non-compete. So for 5 years, I couldn't work with the opticians, vets and dentists. That is when I discovered IT support people. Because back when we had a general business, I'd had a few IT support companies. And I'm not a technical person, but I quite like talking to technical people. I like technology. And as I was looking for what's my next business going to be, I remembered IT support. And that's how I got into IT support in 2016. I've never looked back. And it's the most, as I said to you at the beginning, it's the most wonderful bunch of people to work with. You know, we talk to MSPs in America, Brazil, Spain, loads here in the UK, and with a few cultural differences, everyone is the same. They adore technology and they love helping people and love fixing problems. And that's a good bunch of people to work with. Certainly better than dentists, that's for sure.
I can imagine, and you're so right. You know, there are so many. You know, so I'm based down in Hampshire. I know you're Milton Keynes sort of way, but you know, within 25 miles of me, there's probably about 80 other IT support companies, and I probably know 50% of them. And if I've got a question, I know I can ask one of them, and they'll give me the answer.
Yeah.
And you don't find that in many other industries, that they'll be so helpful and so collegiate, which is really, really, I think, really, really refreshing.
It is. It is.
You could be potentially fighting for the same piece of business on the same patch, but you'll help each other as well, and it's just. Like I said, it's quite unusual.
Yeah.
So obviously you Actually, you've answered that next question already. Why did you decide to help IT companies? You've answered that one already. So
It's like I knew what you were going to ask me.
yeah, exactly. Anybody would think this podcast was planned. So, how has technology changed the way you work from working with those vets, dentists, and opticians through to MSPs?
That's a really good question. I was reflecting on that driving back from the school run this morning. I think the world is so different now, and it relates back to that remote working thing we were talking about. That business I had before. So where are we? 2023 now. So 6 years ago we had an office in Northamptonshire that had 10 staff in. They were all young, like 22-year-olds. They were a management nightmare. When you come to take on your first staff, Tony, 22-year-olds are great because they're full of energy and you can train them, but they're also they're like cattle. They have to be herded, or like cats maybe. And there are upsides and downsides of hiring young people. So we had lots of overheads, we had lots of management burdens. There was a problem every day. Whereas if I flip through now, I've got around about the same number of staff now. They're all older, so we have a policy of only hiring mature people. Our youngest person is 31. Everyone except one, so of our team, 9 of them have got kids. Everyone works from home. It's all. I mean, in fact, before it was popular, we did remote flexible working. It's just the technology is a lot easier now than it was in 2016, 2017, and the business is actually more profitable. So the headline figures are the same as the last business I had, but the profit is way up because we haven't got the overheads. We haven't got people standing around in a kitchen doing no work, whinging at the office. Instead, my team, I don't care if my team do their work in 10 hours or 100 hours. Actually, I do care if it's 100 because I don't want them burning out. But, I know it's you and I are talking on a Friday morning. I'm the only person working right now. So my support team will have gone through the support inbox, done what they need to do. And now I know 3 of them are at sports days today, at their kids' sports days. No one's checking their phone every 5 minutes because it's remote work. It's flexible. If they needed to work last night, so they're off today, then that's their choice to do that. And that's, I think, how the technology has massively changed for us. I think for businesses that haven't embraced that yet, and I'm sure that many of your listeners still, they might have gone to working from home when they had to, but then they tried to get people back into the office, or maybe there's a bit of what we call a hybrid. I think our world of work is changing faster than we realise. So I don't know if you're aware, there are some formal 4-day working week experiments. They're either ongoing now or they've finished. And
I think they finished recently.
But there was nothing but positive results, wasn't there? So the staff were happier, the work got done. The same amount of work got done in less time. People have better lives because we all know like when we have a bank holiday, right? We all get to the end of a bank holiday and think, oh, that was a really good weekend, just because you've had a third day. It's more natural for our bodies to do that. And I think the businesses that are going to recruitment is hard in many industries, and people's expectations are very high these days of what they want from their employer. And that's as someone who's been employing people for well over 20 years. So we use a piece of software called Basecamp, which is project management software, but it allows us as a team to communicate with context. So if we're talking about project A, we only put comments in project A. If we're talking about project B, we only put comments in there. It's just so much better than email. And the beauty of that is it allows us to discuss a number of different complicated issues at the same time without confusing each other. And these kind of tools, they've kind of been around the last 20 years, but I think I don't know if you would agree, Tony, but the sophistication of them has reached a new level these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got Basecamp, which you've just mentioned, a couple of others that I've used, ClickUp. Then obviously you've got Microsoft Teams, which, I mean, Teams, I remember when it first launched, it was clunky as anything. I mean, it's still got a little bit of the clunk in it, but it's so much easier to use now than it was a while back.
I hate Teams. I really do. And I know that as an MSP, you're much more inclined towards Microsoft than I am. But every time I use Teams, it's a distress activity, if I'm completely honest. But slightly controversial view, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I've grown to like Teams, I suppose. I wouldn't say anything. It's not any higher than that, but yeah, it's definitely I think a Marmite piece of software. So how has so obviously you changed the way you work. what's next? I suppose is the next logical question. What's next for yourself, and what's next for your MSP marketing company?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. So we put a big push into the USA a couple of years ago, and again, actually looking at the technology and marketing, although I have been to the US several times on holiday or on vacation, I haven't gone out there for work. So we've been able to win. It's something like 350 clients in the US without setting foot in the country. And again, the technology to do that has been around for a while, but it just feels easier to do that these days. So I think for us, we're going to push into more new countries. We're going to look at translation services. So a couple of years ago, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we did a Spanish version of what we do? Now, none of us on our team speak Spanish. And obviously, because we're doing marketing materials for other people to use, the quality has to be 100% all the time. There is no room for errors. We have about 2 errors a month and we produce, it's something like 480 pieces of marketing materials a month. So that's pretty good. And we're working towards 0. That's the goal. If we were to do a Spanish version, that would open up all of Mexico, that would open up Spain, a number of other territories for us. And it's only been in the last year that I've realized there is probably an AI, an artificial intelligence tool that will be able to help translate what we do very well in English into Spanish, and then get a human to check that Spanish. And again, I mean, AI is not new to you and me, Tony, because we read a lot of technology news. Yeah. But for the average business owner or manager, AI has just exploded this year with the ChatGPT seemingly came out of nowhere. It was actually 7 years worth of work that was there that then just suddenly caught the public's attention. And ChatGPT and all the other AI tools are not good enough for, I don't believe they're not good enough for complete solutions, but they're good enough to get you along the way. I was watching a video on YouTube last night of a guy comparing, he's like a film editor, and he was comparing him doing things like taking someone out of a scene and replacing them with cloned background to an AI tool doing it. So it would take him an hour to take a person out, and it would be perfect. It would take the AI 30 seconds, and it wouldn't be perfect, but it would be enough that he could then go in and fix it. And he says overall, his message was overall, I can do this in 20 minutes. With the AI does the bulk of the work, and I just tidy it up. And I think it's the same for translation. It's the same for writing. So I think, look, going forward, I think again, just as I said, that the businesses that will thrive are the ones that embrace flexible remote working. Going forward, the businesses that really thrive are those that don't see AI as a threat. Whatever it is that you do in whatever way that AI can get in the way, but you see it as a way of speeding things up. We don't use AI writing tools yet. I'm sure we will at some point. We may use it, if anything, to put in a sentence that we've written and say to the AI, give me 10 different versions of this sentence. Because sometimes you don't know a different or a better way of writing it until you've seen a better way of structuring a sentence. That's an example of how we might use AI. And I think all businesses, regardless of what you output, you've got to look at these tools as they're not perfect, but my goodness, they just quickly break down all the different options for you, and they can enhance what you're doing very, very quickly. And you and I will know, Tony, a lot of the software that we rely on, like Teams, I know I was just beating up on Teams there, but actually Microsoft has been very good for a very long time at putting AI tools into Teams, hasn't it? And there's a whole series of AI, things that make Teams useful and handy, and really clever features are driven by AI, and I think that's you can see the future for technology like that.
Yeah, and Adobe have started jumping on the AI bandwagon. They've just implemented some generative AI stuff into Photoshop and Illustrator. I had a little play with that last week, and I was like, it's pretty good stuff. It's, again, like you said, it's not perfect, and it's never going to get to a level, not potentially in our lifetimes anyway, where it's going to take somebody's job. I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it, it's taken ChatGPT 7 years to get to where it is now.
Exactly, yeah.
Lots of
the way I look at
it
is...
Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, we're talking over each other. It's because we're both passionate about talking about this subject. The way I see it is we are 18th century peasants walking behind a horse holding a plough in a field. And ChatGPT is someone's just driven a tractor, like a proper motorized tractor into the field. And we're all staring at it going, oh, what's that? That looks cool. I wonder if that's going to take my job. And of course, it's going to take our jobs, right? So actually, I'm going to disagree with you. It is going to take our jobs, but we're going to move up. We're going to find better jobs. We're going to do more things. If you just look at space right now, we've got these amazing companies. You've got Elon and Jeff Bezos and a number of other people competing to get humans into space cheaply and more efficiently than ever before. Bravo. What about when they start using, or maybe they are already, start using the AI tools to start coming up with solutions they would never have thought of, to start crunching millions and millions of pieces of data to find answers that humans that on their own or with using computers would never have got to. And that moves us up. Now, I think the peasants in the 18th century that said, well, I can't do, I don't know what accent this is, but I can't do plowing anymore. I better go over there and learn how to work at that factory. And that's what the peasants did. They moved on. They let's not get into the whole factory environments, but they moved on. They retrained, and as humans, we became more efficient and started where we're going with this. And I actually think AI it's another shift in humanity. There are lots and lots of potential pitfalls, but I honestly believe we'll figure it out along the way. Let's hope I'm not just over optimistic.
But no, actually, the way you've described that, it's like I suppose another industrial revolution, but with we're not going from coal to electricity. We're going from not having AI to having AI, and I use it on an infrequent basis. I use it for ideas. Like I'm going quite head on into using video more for my business because lots of MSPs especially don't. And I think you'll see a growing number of MSPs start to do that. I mean, I've seen a few more do it since I've started. And I use ChatGPT just to get different titles for my videos. So I'll be like, YouTube video about X, Y, and Z. Give me 10 title examples. And some of the titles that they're giving are pretty good. And, something I wouldn't have thought of. So even from something as simple as that, it saves, just type that into that and it generates 10. I can choose one that I like, do a bit of A/B testing with a few people, and then find the right one. That's an hour. Whereas I could be sat there for an hour twiddling my thumbs trying to work out a title, which wouldn't necessarily be as good.
Exactly.
So I think it's just AI is just going to be enable us to work smarter, not harder, which is what technology is all about.
It is.
So my final question for you, Paul, because again, thank you so much for taking your time out. Because I know that you don't typically work Fridays, so thank you so much. But what's one piece of advice you could give any of the listeners regarding their marketing?
That's such a great question, and I know there are a whole variety of different people running different kinds of businesses listening to this. So I think my general broad piece of advice will be do more marketing than you think you need to do. So unless you're even if you're super busy, do more marketing than you think you need to do. Marketing is not just about winning new clients. It's actually about winning new clients, getting your existing clients to buy from you more often, and getting your existing clients to choose to spend more with you. And the challenge for any business owner or manager is to put in place marketing that happens all the time. Tony, you'll know I'm a big fan of marketing systems as opposed to campaigns. So people say, oh, we need to do a marketing campaign, and they do a great campaign and they win some business, and then they do nothing for another 10 months. Which that doesn't help you as a business. So I always prefer you have in place a system, and certainly all the work that you and I are doing together is about systemizing weekly marketing happening within your business. For any business, it's about getting the right message in front of the right person at the right time. For a business like an MSP, that right time could be, it could be 5 to 7 years before someone's thinking of switching from one IT company to another. But then for different kinds of businesses, it could be an annual purchase or, even faster than that. But you've got to keep the marketing going. So every day there's an opportunity to win a new client or sell something more to an existing client. And it's only when you're constantly doing marketing that actually that comes out. I think the world's most successful businesses, apart from those that capture a fad, something like Facebook. I mean, Facebook wasn't a fad, but Facebook was the right tool at the right time, driven by the right people. So which is why Facebook suddenly grew and exploded. It wasn't marketing that made Facebook great. It was the product. It was unique. But for the average small business owner, we need to be marketing all the time. And the most successful businesses, are typically the ones that are just better at marketing than their competitors.
Brilliant. Look, so thank you so much for coming on, Paul. It's been a pleasure to meet you, because again, we haven't met in person yet.
Not yet.
It will happen one day. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Our tip of the episode. Wow, how good was that? Huge thanks to Paul for coming onto the show. I've been a customer of his for over a year now, but that was our first ever conversational interaction. And Paul, I really, really do appreciate you taking the time out to come onto the show. It's now time for the tip, and I want to speak around what Paul just said. Do more marketing than you think you need to do. I think this is an amazing tip, and it fits for any business, because any business and every business will market their products or services, but they'll do it in a different way to a similar business in a different town or city. Even if there are multiple businesses offering the same products or services, they will market their services differently. They'll market their businesses differently. I'm fairly sure that no other IT support company in Winchester has a podcast. It's a way of me being able to pass information, advice and news to people within my town and beyond, and also to inform and educate those listeners or watchers on YouTube about both business in general, but also facets of my own business and industry. Now, I know I don't do as much marketing as I need to, and as a single person business, I do as much as I can. I have a newsletter. I utilise social media. I have educational guides thanks to Paul's MSP Marketing Edge service. I do blog articles. I'm doing more with YouTube video. Is there more I can do? Yes. So in my office, right up there, I have a board, and for Q3 and 4, my aim is to increase my marketing levels up to 25%. And this is going to be measured as well. I want to see YouTube views grow, more subscribers, new people signing up to my email newsletter, more inquiries coming through my website. Will it be enough marketing? No, because I will always want more. It's human nature to want more. How many of us want that new car, or that next big holiday, or if we're business owners, to reach that next turnover milestone? Having goals and intentions is a good thing to have, and in business, marketing is just one way of achieving those goals. Before you go and get marketing, I've been Tony, the IT Smart Guy. Thank you so much for watching or for listening. I hope you found this episode insightful, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next episode. Huge thanks again go to Mr. Paul Green, and I do have one small favour to ask. If you've enjoyed this episode, or even if you haven't, let us know. It's the only way I can get any better at this. And if you haven't already, give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the IT Smart Guy podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'd love for you to like and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice.